Good evening, everyone, and welcome back again to Concerned Citizens Media. I have uh, very short news and Concerned Citizens Media comment for today, plus uh, videos at the end. So let's start reading the news first. Here are the news and the concerned citizens media comments for December 17, 2020. First, the breaking news. European Union delays 90 million euro in aid to Ethiopia over Tigray crisis. The reason for the EU aid suspensions are one, Ethiopia's refusal to allow independent investigation into the Tigray region. Second reason, Ethiopia blocking international journalists from entering and reporting on the Tigray war and its consequences. Three, Ethiopia's restriction on aid agencies from reaching the war victims and to internally displaced refugees. And the fourth reason for aid suspension, for Ethiopia's unwillingness to end the war on its own citizens. European Union is extremely dissatisfied with Ethiopian authorities' general response to their concerns. EU's calls and concerns about the humanitarian situations in Tigray region were ignored or trashed by Ethiopian government on the pretext of the country's sovereignty. These are the statements of the Ethiopian authorities. Law and order operations are none of the global community's business. Ethiopia does not need babysitters. So these are the expressions for refusing for the calls of international investigation and for refusing, all the aids from reaching the country. So they are resisting by using different excuses and very tough words, saying like Ethiopia does not need babysitters. Such and other responses are extremely disappointing to the European Union and other countries. Concerned citizens media appreciate European Union's hold on this financial aid to Abiy Ahmed's administration. But holding the aid is not enough to force current Ethiopian leaders to examine their conduct and make changes that can satisfy Ethiopians and the global community. European Union, the United States, Australia, Canada, and others must consider sanctions against Ethiopia's leadership so that they can be forced to alter the direction of the country into the correct pathway from dictatorship to democratic stateship or statehood. Ethiopia is in chaos. Peace, stability, law and order are lacking in the country, especially in Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz, southern Tigray region and others. The hopes for free and fair election is diminishing. The Abiy Ahmed administration sealed the Tigray and the Maikadra war from domestic and global media to cover up the atrocities or possibly the war crimes committed by governments, excessive force used against its own citizens. Abiy Ahmed's atrocities, especially on Oromos in Oromia region, is not getting domestic and global media coverage. Residents living in East and West Wallagga, Guji, and other areas have been suffering from constant air bombardment, tanks, shellings, and other military operations. Oneg Shene is used by Ethiopian government as an excuse to cause maximum sufferings on peaceful citizens. No one is accountable for all the killings, tortures, rapes, and other human rights violations carried out against the peaceful Oromos. They are not even allowed to run for their lives to the neighboring countries. European Union, USA, Canada, Australia, and other countries must not ignore the Oromos that have been subjected to genocide in these remote areas for almost more than 2 years. Under Abiy Ahmed administration, force became the only answer for every citizen's legitimate concerns. Every government apparatus, the police, the military, the special forces, the justice system, the government media, finance, and others have been used as an advantage by ruling party to crack down on dissidents and to silence oppositions. Tough talks and only expressing concerns are not enough to save Ethiopia and to save Ethiopians and Ethiopia from the Eritrean style of dictatorship. Tough action must be applied on the current Ethiopian leaders. Ethiopians back home and in the diaspora community must also strengthen their force to prevent Abiy Ahmed and his supporters from taking the country into further chaos and disintegration. We must not be blinded with temporary benefits. No one's blood should be shed or spilled in the process of building or restoring Ethiopia. So that is the concerned citizens media comment uh, about the situation in Ethiopia. It's a very tough situation, really. So holding the aid is not enough. It should be cancelled. Plus, other extra measures should be considered, like sanctions, to change the behavior of these uh, bragging politicians, disrespecting the global communities, and they think they have the power, or maybe they got advice from Isaias Afewerki not to worry about the global communities. So uh, they need pressure to change the course, to make that country a democratic country, not to follow a tyranny style. If it is ignored, we are heading to that direction. I said last time it could be Idi Amin on the way. And if you follow the news today, the PP cadres and their supporters forced the people in Wallagga, East and West Wallagga area to demonstrate against oil levy. I know these people are very tough. They don't do it willingly. and they are tough. They are not like other areas, but I think they force them to come out and to, you know, to say we don't need oil left, we don't need election, blah blah, blaming them for all activities. But this is also is not a solution for that country's problem. It's a negotiation. It is a dialogue should be held to uh, to change the direction of that country. Intimidating, forcing people to come out to demonstrate against something is not a good solution. You know, uh, I know these people are forced to come out. So forcing people, uh, coercing them to do something beyond their willingness is not the right way. We have to condemn that, and we have to challenge the Abiy Ahmed administration to come to the table to solve the problems through dialogues with all concerned citizens back home. There is a report circulating on social media about Sudanese army crossing into Ethiopia border and occupying some areas. The Ethiopian government remained silent about this border conflict, but the Sudanese government talked about Sudan's army clashing with Ethiopian army and the militia that are attempting to cross into Sudanese borderline. The Sudan government also stated that it is expanding its defense force on the border between Ethiopia and Sudan to safeguard its borderline. This is a very dangerous development between these two countries. However, concerned citizens media still appreciate Sudan and its citizens for opening their borders to welcome and take care of the Tigrayan war victims. They deserve big thank you despite this new development on the border. We have to appreciate the Sudanese for opening the border for the people fleeing the war or fleeing the conflict, who are forced to flee their homes and run for their life. So that is a positive for Sudanese, uh, accepting them, taking care of them just like a brother. So concerned citizens media appreciate that. French President Emmanuel Macron tested positive for COVID-19. The French government brief statement said the president took a test as soon as the first symptoms appeared, and he would isolate himself for several days. He will continue to work and take care of his activities at a distance. Abiy Ahmed wished him and prayed for his immediate full recovery. If the Prime Minister did the same quick response to President Donald Trump of USA, Boris Johnson of UK, Canadian Prime Minister, and other important figures, nothing is surprising here. If he only did for Emmanuel Macron, that means something is cooking between Abiy Ahmed and French president. It would increase our suspicion about France's silence on the extreme human rights violations happening in Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz, Walaita, Tigray, and other regions under Abiy Ahmed administration. Personal relationship must not be used as excuse to cover up or ignore the atrocities Ethiopians are experiencing under the current Ethiopian leadership. So France is mostly silent because very close relationship between Abiy Ahmed and Emmanuel Macron. So we don't see any statement coming out from France. So that should be changed. This extreme human rights violation is happening in Ethiopia, and media coverage are denied, and the medias under the government, they don't cover except positive news from the government or government propaganda. So especially in the remote areas, they're just killing innocent citizens and report as Onek Shani on their media. So atrocities are happening, genocide is happening, especially in Oromia, and it should be condemned by global communities, and Abiy Ahmed should face very serious consequences for doing that. I know he was sued in an international court, but I don't know how far that case is going. But the atrocities are still happening. They are not stopping. They are killing uh, citizens. The command post is still there, making miserable life for Oromos and others. So it's a very tough time anyway. Okay, this is the news from Concerned Citizens Media. Let's share videos. Okay, let's see. Okay.
All right, good afternoon.
So first, I shared the video for the update from United Nations briefing. It's a very short video about Ethiopia, but they're talking uh, about all the activities around the globe. But I want to just focus the statement about Ethiopia. Let's listen first this one. United Nations.
Everybody who's in New York is staying warm and safe, given the weather outside. Let me start off with the Secretary General, as we often do, who, as you know, is in Berlin, in Germany, where he is addressing tomorrow members of the Bundestag. He was invited to speak to the Bundestag on the occasion of the UN's 75th anniversary. Just a few moments ago, he met with the German Foreign Minister, Heiko Maas, with whom he discussed the current COVID pandemic, the climate crisis, the need for multilateralism to solve these global challenges. They also touched upon the situations in Libya, in the Sahel, in Sudan, and Ethiopia. And in a joint press encounter with the Foreign Minister after their meeting, the Secretary General praised Mr. Maas's dedication and engagement through Germany's membership of the Security Council. The Secretary General also thanked Germany for hosting the Libya conference at the beginning of the year and its effort to galvanize the international community's support for the Libyan people. On the subject of Ethiopia, the Secretary General once again underlined the importance of unfettered access for humanitarian assistance, as well as the swift resumption of the rule of law in a secure environment and, of course, in full respect for human rights. Mr. Guterres added that the UN system stands ready to support Ethiopian-led initiatives to encourage inclusive dialogue, reconciliation, and post-conflict reconstruction. Those remarks will be sent to you shortly if they haven't already done so. And tomorrow, the Secretary General will meet with Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, as well as with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. And his meeting with the Chancellor will be followed by joint press stakeout, and we'll share with you those remarks as well as the speech that he will deliver tomorrow.
That's a short statement about Ethiopia. Then let's share the video.
Against the managers of these platforms. So government is simply right.
Okay, this one is talking about Uganda. As you might know, Uganda is very close to hold election, and Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni running again, and this guy has been in power since 1986 for almost 34 years, so it's not enough. He is running again. He is challenged by pop star Baby Wine, who turned a politician, a very well-known musician from Uganda. He became now a politician. He is challenging so well-established president. Is not easy. Already, Bobby Wine was arrested, tortured, wounded while holding, demonstration with his supporters. So it's tough in Africa when you are attempting to run against a well-established system. All the securities, the justice system, the finance, everything is working for the president. It's not like America. They are not separate. The military is with the president. The security is with the president. So it's tough to run against well-established candidate and to win. That's why we start witnessing some chaos already, and to challenge Bobby Wine and his supporters, the government is also asking Google to shut down at least 14 YouTubes related to opposition figures or opposition parties to crack down. So this is Africa, and we'll see if this guy luckily win, or we don't know. But this is very short video. You should avoid sharing with children. It looks like.
The campaigns for presidential elections in Uganda haven't been peaceful. Police and soldiers have blocked political opposition candidates on the roads. It's all been live streamed by online TVs like this channel on YouTube. The government's now written to YouTube's owner, Google, asking it to block 14 of the channels, accusing them of inciting violence.
No accusations have been put before a court of law against the managers of these platforms. So government is simply writing to Google as a means of intimidating these managers of these YouTube channels and platforms as an attempt, a continued attempt to stifle political opposition.
This is Bobby Wine, the one you see on the photo.
Presidential candidate Bobby Wine. His supporters are young. They're at home online. And the platforms provide an opening for opposition in a country where the government
This
controls
is
access
Bobby
to
Wine.
much of the traditional media. Dozens of people were killed when police violently broke up demonstrators last month. It followed the arrest of Bobby Wine. Police said his rallies broke
That's
COVID
him.
rules. Opposition and rights groups say the government doesn't want Ugandans or the world to see what's happening. Police since announced that all journalists had to be vetted to be able to cover the elections.
This will give a very clear distinction between genuine journalists and those that are ingenuine, and also help eliminate the propagation of rumors, disinformation, antagonistic discussions, which are likely to incite violence.
Violence is something that journalists say they've suffered at the hands of the police. This cameraman was shot in the face with a rubber bullet. This reporter is among a group who say they were beaten by police last week. Police say they're investigating. Press groups say the government's now trying to prevent foreign journalists from coming to cover the polls.
Lots of journalists that wanted to come into Uganda to cover this election. And what we've seen is that many of those journalists who have applied for accreditation have been left waiting for days, for weeks for that accreditation to be processed. In some cases, journalists who have entered the country have even been deported.
The government blocked social media services during the last election. Google has said governments have to submit court orders for YouTube channels to be removed. So for now, the online TVs keep streaming. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera.
Okay, that is Uganda. I hope they will finish their election peacefully without anybody's injury or death. You know, they should let the people vote freely, without intimidation, without threatening. You know, and if the people are willing to make this guy retire after 34 service, it's okay. Let him retire and be an advisor, you know. So we will see, we'll follow this one. And the last video for tonight, let me see. I have one more, but I just warn you not to share this video, especially about Uganda with children. It is graphic, so please avoid watching with children. Okay, this is a video I shared from CNN talking about the current situation in Ethiopia, Tigray region, about the aid arriving. So let's listen to this one.
What if building applications was simplified so anyone could do it? Coding becomes humanly possible for everyone with Mendix Low Code, a Siemens company.
This is so exciting. The ICRC and Ethiopian Red Cross trucks arrive. So here we are in Mekele.
What you are seeing is the first international aid to arrive in Ethiopia's Tigray region since fighting erupted there more than a month ago. Healthcare facilities have become paralyzed after supplies of medicine and basics like surgical gloves simply ran out. Well, the death toll in the conflict between federal forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front may well be in the thousands. And now, two foreign aid agencies have confirmed that some of their staff members have been killed. Ethiopia's government denies that its forces have prevented humanitarian aid from reaching civilians, instead claiming they are trying to stabilize the region. We've been connecting you to every development of this story, which is not a short order, given that the government-mandated communications blackout was in effect, and that took effect in November. Up until now, we've only been able to contact humanitarian agencies operating in Sudan. But our next guest has been on the ground in Ethiopia and is just returning from Addis Ababa, where he met with Ethiopian officials. Take a listen to what Patrick Youssef had to say while there.
The worst for medical personnel, for the health staff in hospitals and primary healthcare centers is to be unable to help, is to be unable to provide support due to lack of material, due to lack of assistance, and to lack of stocks. And that's indeed what we're trying and hoping to achieve.
Well, Patrick Youssef himself, director of the International Committee of the Red Cross for Africa, joining me now live from Geneva. Thank you, sir. I know you are just back. Please just explain what you saw and heard when you were in Addis Ababa, and who did you speak to?
Thank you, Becky. So the visit indeed was to support the teams on the ground, to make sure we meet as many high officials as possible, and make sure that we showcase the importance, the pertinence, the humanitarian imperative behind our repeated calls for access to the Tigray region, to Mekelle, where we have a team, where we had a team since the beginning of the crisis and still remained in Mekelle city, to be able to get a proper assessment of the humanitarian needs, the plight of those people living inside the city, but also around the city of Mekelle and the Tigray province, and bring them to the attention of the authorities and push as much as possible for humanitarian access, which we managed to achieve last Saturday by bringing this much needed assistance, 7 truckloads of medical assistance and other forms of aid into Mekelle city, the first international convoy to reach the city. The purpose really was to get as close as possible to the health facilities that were fully paralyzed since the beginning of the crisis, with no assistance, no medical assistance to help them cope with growing needs.
So the convoy has now arrived. We're showing images of that with what you described as much needed medical supplies. What are the teams, or what is your team on the ground in Mekelle telling you about what is needed most now? How do they assess the needs at this point?
You know, first of all, the situation overall is very fluid and very concerning. Over a month since the start of the crisis, where we have been in a full lockdown, basically, we witness a shortage of food, access to basic services, but also Mekelle, for example, has been struggling with water supplies. So basic services. We're also in the harvest period with levels of displacement, with level of crisis, conflict. The harvest will be severely limited. We're extremely worried because simply people have already been severely impacted by COVID-related restrictions, now displacement, uprooting, loss of property and income, and indeed the trauma related to the fighting and insecurity. And these are a bouquet of things that people who have chosen not to carry weapons have to endure on a day-to-day basis. And that's why we are trying as much as possible to repeat that convoy, to make sure other organizations also get access to Mekelle in order to boost the humanitarian response as quickly as possible.
Ethiopia's government has denied that the war in its northern Tigray region was preventing aid from reaching civilians. I recently spoke to Jan Egeland, who is, of course, head of the Norwegian Refugee Council. He was in Sudan this time last week. Have a listen to what he told me.
So far, as I understand, there has not been convoys into Tigray. We've gone, however, to Afar, which is next door, where we also have received people fleeing from Tigray, which is then from one Ethiopian region to the next.
Many aid organisations are urging the government to let more staff members inside the territory. Having just come back from there yourself, just how dangerous is it currently for humanitarian workers on the ground, because the International Rescue Committee and the Danish Refugee Council both putting out statements Friday saying that members of their staff had been killed, but that because communications in the area were so difficult, they were not able to confirm or gather further details. Look, if your plan is to keep going into Ethiopia, how concerned are you for your staff's safety?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's very sad to hear and to learn of the death of our colleagues from both organizations. It's also heartbreaking to see that a large number of people have also lost their lives, have been uprooted and not been able to communicate with their loved ones. We've been on the border with Sudan and hearing these, outrageous stories of people waiting at the border to make sure that all their family members have crossed to the other side. So very heartbreaking stories indeed. And we're certainly, we need to feel safe, secure, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that when we operate in hazardous areas, these are the risks we're supposed to take. Now, the priority going forward in terms of information gathering and proper assessments is really to boost our response in the central Tigray. And indeed, it was very volatile to start with. During the first phase of the emergency situation, to get access into the city. There was a full lockdown, and indeed it was extremely difficult. That's why we came out public and spoke about the dire needs in either hospital and other healthcare facilities. But today, I think there's an opening to boost our response, to bring in much-needed assistance with a principled approach, with getting full transparency in speaking to the local authorities, but also to the federal authorities, again, in full transparency and in coordination with other ministries and local actors on the ground, such as the Ethiopian Red Cross, which was really a brilliant and impressive local actor to work with since the beginning of the crisis.
Do you believe that the international community is doing enough when it comes to this humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia? Is there enough pressure being brought to bear? And what is your message to the world at this point?
First, I don't think pressure should only be the only lever to bring much-needed assistance. We really need to be aware of the complexities, the difficulties, the 3 days trip to get to Mekele, to bring the war wounded kids from Nairobi and ship them up to Mekele. So there are a lot of difficult issues we have to grapple with and deal with. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need more access. We do need more access, and the government knows it, Ministry of Peace, and the Defense Forces as well, with whom we really discuss. I think the international community will certainly do more, contribute, and make sure to create a conducive environment, a diplomatic conducive environment for more access, but also for more protection to the civilian population. In just over 1 month fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region, which is not the only region boiling, by the way, in Ethiopia, we discovered a massive humanitarian crisis. We all know that the response must be scaled to meet people's needs. But I think the message here is that we can't wait for these guns to fall silent to start caring for those voiceless in the Tigray region and beyond. They were uprooted, they were imprisoned, some are on hospital beds, and we must not disappoint them. We need to do everything in our capacity to treat them with dignity and bring them the much-needed support they require.
Patrick Youssef, just recently back from Ethiopia, talking to us today from Geneva, the ICRC. You heard it here on CNN. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, CNN, for that update on the aid situation in Mekele, Tigray region. As you saw the video, aid is moving in, especially to the capital city. The other areas are still, according to various reports, still conflict going on, and it's not stable. It's a challenging. Abiy started unwinnable war to make Isaias Afwerki and himself and those Amaras to make them happy. But The country is in chaos. Law and order is broken everywhere. The country is unstable. Nowhere is peace, whether you go to Benishangul, Oromia region, or south side, now Tigray. So it's a very tough situation. And as I said, as I read in the news, the guy said, yes, it's beyond Tigray. The issue is beyond Tigray. It's not only Tigray. It's instability and the problems. People are arrested. So the problem is beyond Tigray, especially in Oromia region. They need also global support. A lot of people, killed, tortured, arrested. They are suffering every day. But we, due to lack of media coverage, the global community, they cannot access that information. It's missing, and the government is deliberately blocking the internet, the phone service to cover up their crimes. It's a very challenging, just like Tigray region, in especially eastern and western Wallagga, Guji. So we are in a tough situation, especially the Oromos need the global help. They are crying for help for more than 2 years. So far, they didn't get assistance to stop their suffering. So we are in very challenging situation, and we have to keep praying and look for solutions too. So still we have to advocate for the victims, the victims in Oromia regions. They don't have voice. They don't have voice. The government media is just the government propaganda. They are not telling us the truth. And the people are dying and suffering, torturing. People are hanged on the tree, thrown in the bush, mass arrest. So it's very tough in Oromia region, and they need global help. They need global attention. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Concerned Citizens Media. Please share your comment, like, dislike, subscribe, share it, and that will help me to advance the Concerned Citizens Media agenda, which is advocating for peace, stability, freedom, democracy, especially in Ethiopia and around the globe. Thank you again. Be safe. So long.